We like to imagine history's greatest inventors as flawless geniuses working in pristine laboratories, executing perfect mathematical blueprints. But the truth is much messier, much weirder, and honestly, a lot more relatable. Some of the most world-changing technologies on the planet weren't born from meticulous planning at all. They were born from dropped experiments, ruined lunches, and terrible cleanup habits. Welcome to the history of accidental genius, where we explore 5 times humanity completely tripped over a mistake and landed in the future. Let's start in the 19th century with Charles Goodyear, a man absolutely obsessed with rubber. At the time, natural rubber was completely useless. If the weather got too hot, it melted into a smelly, gooey, sticky puddle that ruined everything it touched. If the weather turned freezing cold, it became as brittle and rigid as a pane of glass, snapping under the slightest pressure. Goodyear spent years trying to fix this, driving his family completely into debt, experimenting with every chemical he could find. Then in 1839, the breakthrough finally happened, completely by accident. Goodyear was showing off his latest mixture of rubber and sulfur to a crowd when his hands suddenly slipped. A chunk of the gooey mixture flew through the air and landed right on top of a scorching hot stove. Instead of melting into a sticky puddle like it usually did, the rubber charred like a piece of leather. It remained completely firm and flexible despite the intense heat. He had accidentally discovered vulcanization, the exact process that makes modern car tires tough enough to survive the highway. Next up, we traveled to 1938 to meet a young chemist named Roy Plunkett. Plunkett wasn't trying to change the culinary world, he was just trying to invent a safer, non-toxic gas to use inside household refrigerators. He mixed up a batch of tetrafluoroethylene gas and compressed it into a heavy steel cylinder. He stored it on dry ice overnight to let it settle. The next morning, Plunkett opened the valve on the cylinder to check his new gas, but absolutely nothing came out. The tank felt completely heavy, as if it were completely full, but the gas had vanished. Curious and probably a little frustrated, he and his assistant decided to saw the heavy steel cylinder completely in half. Inside, they didn't find a gas at all, but a strange, slippery white powder coating the metal. Curious, Plunkett started testing this mysterious white powder and realized it was completely impervious to heat. It was highly chemical resistant and incredibly slippery. In fact, it was so slick that almost nothing in the universe could stick to it. He had accidentally created polytetrafluoroethylene, which the world now knows as Teflon. It is the magical coating that keeps your morning eggs from bonding to your frying pan. Our third story takes us to the 1960s inside the labs of 3M, where a scientist named Spencer Silver was trying to develop a super strong aerospace adhesive. He wanted a glue so powerful it could literally hold airplanes together. Instead, his experiment yielded the exact opposite. It was an incredibly weak, pressure-sensitive adhesive. It barely held 2 pieces of paper together and peeled off instantly without leaving a single trace. For years, Silver showed his weak glue to everyone at the company, but nobody knew what to do with a glue that didn't actually stick permanently. Then, a few years later, his colleague, Art Fry, was singing in his church choir. He was getting deeply frustrated because his paper bookmarks kept slipping out of his hymnal and losing his place. Fry remembered Silver's weirdly weak glue, painted a tiny strip of it onto a small scrap of yellow paper, and the iconic Post-it note was officially born. Moving on to 1928, we find ourselves in London, inside the notoriously messy laboratory of bacteriologist Alexander Fleming. Fleming was studying Staphylococcus bacteria, but he was also planning a long summer vacation. Instead of properly cleaning his workspace before he left, he simply piled all his active petri dishes into a messy stack in the corner of his bench and walked out the door. When Fleming returned weeks later, he started sorting through the old neglected dishes to wash them. He noticed something bizarre in one specific dish. A spot of green mold had drifted in through an open window and started growing. Right around the edges of this mold, the bacteria hadn't just stopped growing, it had completely dissolved into nothingness. The mold was releasing a powerful substance that killed the deadly microbes, leading directly to the discovery of penicillin, saving millions of lives. Finally, let's look at 1945 and an engineer named Percy Spencer who was working on active military radar systems at Raytheon. Spencer was standing right in front of an active magnetron, a powerful vacuum tube that generates microwaves, when he felt a strange, warm sensation in his pocket. He reached in and discovered that his chocolate bar had completely melted into a gooey liquid mess, even though the room was cold. Intrigued by the invisible heat, he decided to test it further. Excitedly, he placed a handful of raw popcorn kernels right next to the active radar machine and watched in amazement as they started popping all over his lab floor. Next, he put a raw egg near it, which promptly exploded right in his colleague's face. Spencer realized these radio waves could cook food incredibly fast, leading directly to the invention of the countertop microwave oven. So, the next time you burn dinner, lose your keys, or completely ruin a project, don't despair. History shows that the line between a catastrophic failure and a multi-billion-dollar breakthrough is incredibly thin. Sometimes you just need to look at your mistakes with a bit of curiosity, because you never truly know when a ruined experiment might just end up changing the entire world.